I've always given Matthew Vaughn a lot of credit for reinventing and basically reviving the Fox X-Men franchise with his underrated X-Men First Class. Outside of that, however, I never really connected with anything else he's ever done. I know that Kick-Ass and his Kingsman movies received a lot of praise from most people, but those movies always came off to me as Matthew Vaughn trying way too hard to be cool. Which brings us to his latest film, Argylle, which despite its great cast, feels like more of the same. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it! Do it!
Argylle follows reclusive author Ellie Conway, who writes these best-selling espionage novels about a secret agent named Argylle, who's on a mission to unravel a global spy syndicate. However, when the plots of her books start to mirror the covert actions of a real-life spy organization, the line between fiction and reality begin to blur. To whom it may concern, I do not do spoilers in my initial reviews for movies. But it should be noted that the entire plot and twist of this movie was revealed 3 years ago when the project was initially announced. I think that kind of puts things into perspective when you take into consideration that the trailer for this movie was trying to sell it on the prospect of this big reveal.
I don't get it.
I know I say this a lot when I'm talking about modern movies, but while watching Argylle, I couldn't help but feel like I had seen a movie just like this before. Like literally a writer's work being found to reflect something going on in real life in some way, and she's thrust into an adventure where she basically has to live out one of the stories that she typically writes. I know I've seen that concept somewhere before, if not slightly altered, but if anyone else knows what movie I'm talking about or thinking about, please let me know in the comments down below.
Something very familiar about all this.
So basically what we have through a good portion of this movie is Ellie, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, kind of flashing back and forth between the real world and the world that she created in her Argylle novels. And I have to be honest, that transitioning back and forth got to be a little bit obnoxious after a while. It probably sounded like a good idea on paper, but to me, its execution wasn't very aesthetically pleasing. All it really did was make me wish they picked one version of this story or the other and went with a more straight-up homage to past spy flicks. And by picking one or the other of these stories, I mean they should have picked the one that includes Henry Cavill being as close to a James Bond type character as we've seen him before, because that was much more interesting to me than anything that was going on in the main plot involving Ellie. And for that reason, I couldn't help but feel like Henry Cavill was completely wasted in this movie. He's basically used as a gimmick to get Ellie where she needs to go. And because of that, his existence in this film is made to feel almost completely inconsequential. In fact, his whole appearance in the film is used to poke fun at what the audience and general consensus thinks a secret agent should look like. This movie is desperately trying to subvert expectations by tackling these espionage tropes in a very meta way. But I have to be honest, I'm kind of over the whole wink wink nudge nudge, don't take this too seriously approach. People have regularly tried to use that as a crutch to prop up these types of films with the goal that they want you, the audience, to think they are approaching the material in a clever way. In reality, it's just the same old to me. It's nowhere near as clever or original as the writers of the film want it to be. If you are truly trying to reinvent the espionage genre and show me something I've never seen before, you are going to have to do a little bit more than turning it into an unfunny bit that didn't seem to want to end. And if you are telling me this is intended to be a spoof and nothing more, that's fine. But in order for a spoof to work, the audience has to be in on the joke. It comes off like a lot of other Matthew films have, that being it's trying way too hard to be clever and fun, and somehow simultaneously not being either of those things. It's almost like the film knows that it's wasting everyone's time, and the filmmakers want that to be looked at as a positive because it's quote-unquote self-aware.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
Self-awareness is another commonly used phrase that a lot of people use to excuse the shortcomings of a lazy and dull concept. Not even the action sequences in this movie are all that memorable. It's your typical espionage, assassin, choreographed fights with some comedy bits thrown in that do nothing to actually enhance the scenes. I mentioned at the top of this video that the film does have a great cast, and I stand by that. Sam Rockwell, Henry Cavill, Bryan Cranston, and Sam Jackson, just to name a few. But imagine having all of this talent in your film and giving them absolutely nothing to do. I guess Sam Rockwell was at least entertaining at times, but not because of the material, but because of his natural charisma. It was just cliche after cliche with these characters, and again, I think that was intentional. And it's supposed to be looked at as clever, but it wasn't, and it just bored me out of my mind.
I'm having trouble.
And then we have Bryce Dallas Howard, who I have no issue with as an actress. I've seen her in things where she's very entertaining and charming. But I do believe that she was severely miscast in this film. And I get it, it's a joke. Her character is supposed to be unassuming. But to me, she was just not believable in the role that they have her in any way. In fact, on more than one occasion, her character was at the center of a situation in this film that made me roll my eyes. It should also be noted that there is a series of twists contained within this movie which is to be expected for a spy movie. The issue is that every single time one of them happens, I had almost no reaction to them. Because the movie was basically programming me through its general vibe that nothing I'm seeing actually matters. And just when I thought the film had achieved new levels of mediocre, that's when the finale happens, and the finale actually manages to take it down a level from mediocre to straight up garbage at times.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Not only do things get a bit too convoluted when they have these lengthy exposition dumps towards the end of the film as they desperately try to explain everything, but we also have not one, not two, but three ridiculous action set pieces, complete with dancing gunfights, ice skating oil slicks, and a Get Out style brainwashing technique that made absolutely no sense and made you think why the bad guys didn't use this technique sooner. And to top it all off, the 2-hour and 19-minute runtime is just too long. Every single time I thought this film was wrapping up, off the characters go to do one last thing, and then another thing, and then another thing. A 2-hour and change movie should not feel like a 3-hour movie, but that's exactly what Argylle felt like to me in the worst way possible.
That makes sense.
Bottom line, for me, Argylle was a complete waste of time. It very much came off like one huge Matthew Vaughn-sized inside joke that I didn't understand and had no interest in trying to figure out. To me, Argylle is just like every other movie we've seen in the past 10 years when it comes to trying to take the piss out of things that we love in the most lazy way possible. And that's why I'm going to give Argylle the Angry Rocky.
That's right, it stinks! Y'all be cool. Shut up.